In Bangladesh, Cyclone Hamoon lashes into the southeast coast, killing at least 2.
Authorities evacuate hundreds of people to cyclone shelters. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alagao-Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. The Czech Republic considers dispatching trade missions to the Philippines. The United States shows its support for the Philippines amid China's recent actions in Ayungin Shoal. Hong Kong is set to impose its own national security law next year. Russia and Iran decries West's interference in the Caucasus region. And Mexico braces for Hurricane Otis. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has ordered to expedite the release of fuel subsidy to the public transport sector. Energy Secretary Rafael Lotilla said that the president has instructed to shorten the trigger period for the fuel subsidies from 3 months to 1. Lotilla added that the president offered the simplification of the release requirements. The energy chief clarified once the fuel price lasts only for a month, the government will be compelled to release the subsidy.
Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas or BSP said that its policy rate may be raised before the Monetary Board meeting next month. Central Bank Governor Eli Remolona disclosed that an off-cycle move is on the table. Remolona clarified if the data tells inflation will soar significantly, it will affect the bank's projections. This will lead to an off-cycle hike.
The Philippine government has allocated nearly 23 billion pesos for the enhancement of the country's health facilities and services in the 2024 budget. The Department of Budget and Management, or DBM, confirmed that this budget of 22.98 billion pesos is included in the proposed 2024 National Expenditure Program. This funding is specifically designated for the Department of Health's Health Facilities Enhancement Program, or HFEP. The HFEP aims to prioritize universal health care sites and geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas. It will focus on upgrading essential facilities to support robust responses to the COVID-19 and ongoing project construction and equipment needs. DBM Secretary Amena Pangandaman stated that this proposed budget is aimed at improving healthcare standards nationwide, addressing the challenges faced by the healthcare system in light of recent issues.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has encouraged the Federation of Free Farmers, or FFF, to remain actively involved in supporting and empowering farmers and fisherfolk. He made this call during the celebration of the FFF's 70th anniversary. President Marcos acknowledged the 7 decades of the Federation's partnership with the government in the continuous development of the agricultural sector. He commended the FFF for their programs and initiatives that amplify the voices of workers across the country, reflecting the principles of the late President Ferdinand Marcos Sr. The president also expressed his optimism in driving the modernization of the Philippine agriculture and fisheries sector, and looks forward to the Federation's contributions to the vision of a new Philippines.
The Czech Republic considers dispatching trade missions to the Philippines in the coming year to explore potential partnerships in the fields of defense and agriculture. This proposal was discussed during the presentation of credentials by Czech Ambassador to the Philippines, Karel Hechase, to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. at Malacanang Palace. Ambassador Hechase highlighted the Czech Republic's reputation as one of the world's leading producers of high-quality military equipment, arms, and ammunition. He mentioned the country's progression from manufacturing small tractors for agriculture to producing fighter jets, airplanes, and other military equipment. President Marcos expressed his welcome for the prospect of strengthening ties between the two nations, particularly in the areas of agriculture and defense.
Armed Forces Chief of Staff General Romeo Bronner Jr. has stated that resupply missions to BRP Sierra Madre on 2nd Thomas Shoal will continue to be transported by boat, despite China's consistent harassment. General Bronner explained that airdropping supplies to the military personnel on the grounded World War II ship poses logistical challenges and may not be a viable option. He further noted that China has no grounds to oppose the repair of BRP Sierra Madre, particularly in light of China's own construction of artificial islands in the same area. The general emphasized that the country has the right to repair the ship since it is a commissioned Philippine Navy vessel. In response, the Chinese embassy insisted that 2nd Thomas Shoal is part of China's territory and accused the Philippines of violating China's territorial sovereignty.
Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro Jr. has expressed that it is unlikely for China to attack and seize the country's territories in the West Philippine Sea. Natalie Peachy tells us more.
The Defense Secretary outlined several reasons for this viewpoint. He points out that the international community is well aware of China's activity in the region and many nations disapprove of their actions. He suggests that it would not be in Beijing's interest to initiate a conflict if they wish to maintain a peaceful image on the global stage. Teodoro also emphasizes that in the event of such a scenario, the Philippines has both the right and the obligation to defend its sovereignty and territorial jurisdiction under the Constitution. Despite the improbability of such an attack, Teodoro reiterates the importance of continuing to strengthen the armed forces of the Philippines, ensuring the country's preparedness to defend its interests if the need ever arises. Natalie Peachy for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The United States has reiterated its support for the Philippines amid China's recent actions in Ayungin Shoal. Vin Pascua for the details.
United States National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan reassured that Washington will support the Philippines following China's obstruction in the country's routine resupply in Ayungin Shoal. This came during a telephone call between Sullivan and his Philippine counterpart, Eduardo Año. Sullivan and Año had reaffirmed the unfaltering alliance and friendship between the two states. The two top officials also discussed impending engagements between U.S. and the Philippines, which paves the way to further strengthen their close partnership. Meanwhile, Sullivan underscored the ironclad U.S. alliance commitment to the Philippines under the Mutual Defense Treaty. Washington has also condemned China's dangerous maneuvers in the Ayungin Shoal, which jeopardized Filipino crew members' safety. Vin Pascua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Philippines will counter China's disinformation on the West Philippine Sea. These are the strong words from Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro. He says the Department of Defense is not alarmed by China's actions in the West Philippine Sea, saying they are expecting it. He also asserts they are prepared to explain the issue as well as the motives of China in the region.
Disinformation and information operations is in the playbook of China naturally, and so we are countering the narratives by information operations such as this. Such as me explaining to our countrymen why they should not believe in China's narrative. Sinasabi pa ng China, the favorite Chinese narrative is that this is all a play of the United States and that we are just marionettes or puppets o tuta ng mga Amerikano na sumusunod sa playbook nila. Ito po'y nakaka-insulto sa Pilipino at it assumes that we have no ability to think for ourselves and to stand up for our own rights. And that really disgusts me. And so hinihimok po ang ating mga kababayan na talagang tumindig laban dito sa pang-iinsulto ng China sa ating.
The Defense Secretary also states that the Philippines does not want war with China, but he says that the country is only asserting its territorial and sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea.
Swarming, yung illegal activities nila doon, yung pagharang, ay plano ito ng China talaga na sakupin ang buong South China Sea na ating dapat tutulan. Maliwanag po, hindi tayo nakikipagdigmaan sa China. Pinoproteksyonan lang natin ang atin sa ilalim ng international law. Likewise, they're also planting disinformation within the country in order to weaken the political will and unity of this country. Kaya kailangan po nagkakaisa po tayo dito pag tayong maniniwala sa disinformation po ng China. Dahil ang narrative po nila ay lumalabas ang tunay na intention nila. Kunwari po ay peaceful, kunwari po maka-neighborly, ngunit sa likod nito iba ho ang hangarin.
Secretary Teodoro also believes that the Maritime Zones Bill is significant and crucial, saying it will serve as a guide to identify the jurisdiction of the Philippines.
Ang tulong po nito ay identify ang areas na pwede mag-transit ang mga vessels freely sa internal waters natin. Kaya importante po ito para sa ganon, may klarong basihan kung saan tayo mag-ooperate at klaro ang jurisdiction natin sa buong mundo at sa loob. Pero hindi po ito makaka-apekto sa ating exclusive economic zone. Ito'y ayon lamang sa UNCLOS kung saan natin binabase din ang ating mga claims.
The Philippine Navy holds its annual anti-submarine and surface warfare drills dubbed Exercise Pagbubuklod. This is with the aim to enhance its unit's proficiency and interoperability. The units will also conduct tactical fleet operations such as interdiction surface, air, and subsurface maneuvers and integrated fleet support systems. The said drill is part of the Philippine Navy's mandate to provide highly competent sailors and aviators.
It is part of our mandate to continuously train fleet forces to assure our force employer, the naval forces, and unified command that we are providing them highly competent sailors and aviators for mission success.
Pagbubuklod drills are scheduled on October 25 and 26 in Zambales waters.
Officials from the Parañaque Integrated Terminal Exchange, or PITX, are prepared for the influx of passengers this coming long weekend and holiday. An estimated 1.6 million passengers are expected to travel over the weekend, which coincided with the Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections, or BSKE.
1.6 million na pasahero sa ating long vacation. Inaasahan po natin ang pagdagsa ng mga tao, etong darating na Friday hanggang weekend po.
The Land Transportation Office also inspected buses to ensure the safe travel of those who will go home to their provinces. The Philippine Coast Guard will also notify the PITX management if there are changes in the travel schedule.
Operational lang po ang mga pantawid dagat natin. However, if meron po tayong magkaroon ng advice galing sa PCG or LTFRB, sure naman po tayo na susunod tayo sa kanilang patakaran.
The PITX said the passengers can seek help from their emergency hotlines if they encounter problems along the way. The management also reminded the passengers to book their tickets early and avoid the rush hour.
Paalala sa ating mga pasahero na uuwi sa kanilang mga probinsya na mag-book na ng ticket dito sa ating terminal para maiwasan ang siksikan sa darating na bakasyon. Huwag na rin magdala ng mga flammable items o kahit ano pang sharp objects dahil ito ay makukumpiska sa ating terminal. Iwas hassle din sa inyong mga biyahero.
Coming up, the U.S. Congressional House Speaker drama continues. Gaza Health Ministry announces a total breakdown of its healthcare system. And UN Chief Antonio Guterres pushes for a ceasefire. Stay tuned, Mata ng Agila International will return for more global news.
masasabi mong tunay na kaibigan?
Yep! At kapag siya'y natagpuan na, huwag mo nang pakawalan.
Ang tunay na kaibigan, laging nandyan kahit kailan.
Handang gawin ang lahat. Maging happy ka lang.
Gagawin ang Afro-Frank para sa'yo, para sa pamilya, at para sa bayan.
Tulad na lang ng inyong mga bagong kaibigan.
Tuwing umaga,
Love
Tudipe
and
and Afro-Frank!
everything!
Lunes hanggang Biyernes,
6:30 ng umaga
sa Net 25! Let's get there! Tudipe and Afro-Frank! Laban din! Tudipe and
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Hong Kong leader John Lee said the semi-autonomous city would create its own national security law next year, 4 years after the Chinese Communist Party assumed control over the once autonomous city-state. His announcement comes a day after Beijing passed a law to strengthen patriotic education for children and families.
基本法第23條規定，特區應自行立法，禁止危害國家安全的行為和活動。香港國安法第7條規定，特區政府應當盡早完成基本法規定的維護國家安全立法，完善相關法律。政府正全力研究有效立法方案，落實特區政府應實踐嘅憲制責任。2024年內完成立法。
Massive pro-democracy protests rocked the finance hub in the past, bringing hundreds of thousands of people to the streets to call for greater freedoms and more autonomy from mainland China. In response, Beijing imposed a national security law to punish for major crimes, namely secession, subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces, with sentences marking up to life in prison. Security chief turned leader Lee stated his intention of creating their own security law during his second policy address, stating that countries have been undermining China and Hong Kong's implementation of the one country, two system policy.
我對香港充滿信心，但係同時必須居安思危。雖然香港整體大致平穩，但係有國家對我國嘅和平發展作出誤判，刻意針對打壓，而香港內部亦都潛伏咗軟對抗嘅破壞力量。因此，我哋必須提高警惕，自發維護國家安全，全面準確貫徹一國兩制方針。
The Beijing anointed leader said that the city would continue safeguarding national security and improving its relevant legal system and enforcement mechanisms. Under Hong Kong's constitution, the city is required to make its own law combating 7 security-related crimes, including treason and espionage.
Well, the police action to use all possible legal means to arrest the wanted persons who are suspected to have committed serious offenses that endangers national security is the execution of the duties, of an important duty that is imposed on them.
The last legislative attempt in 2003 was shelved after 500,000 Hong Kongers took to the streets to protest the move.
任何公眾人士都可以幫助警方去拘捕呢一啲通緝人，警方會保密處理。提供線索嘅人士可以根據懸紅通告按實際結果獲得賞格，包括通緝人嘅親戚朋友都有資格嘅，歡迎佢哋提供通緝人嘅資料。
Rio gangsters set fire to 35 buses after their crime boss was killed by the police. The criminal groups also torched 4 lorries and a train. The police arrested 12 people as suspects. Public transport in the city was also partly suspended. The City Hall declared a level 3 alert level. Authorities also warned the residents and tourists of another possible retaliation by the gangsters.
During a meeting aimed at finding a solution towards peace in the Caucasus region, Iran and Russia denounced the European Union and the U.S. for interference in tensions between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Moscow brokered a 2020 ceasefire between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Since then, European Union and United States have stepped up their own efforts to mediate a peace agreement between the two sides. Armenia and Azerbaijan joined the talks in the Iranian capital, seeking to ease the tensions, which soared with Baku's lightning offensive to retake the long-disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. On the same day as the meeting, Azerbaijan announced the start of joint military drills with its ally Turkey near the border with Armenia, just weeks after Baku seized Karabakh from pro-Yerevan separatists. Foreign ministers from Turkey, Russia, and Iran pushed for peace in the region, claiming that problems of the region cannot be resolved by the intervention of foreign forces. At the end of the talks, Sergei Lavrov denounced attempts by the EU and the United States to interfere with the process of delimiting the border between two countries. According to Moscow's original plan, the 3+3 format meant to include Georgia was a way for multiple world powers to ensure peace in the region, but with Tbilisi's aspirations to join the EU and NATO, that doesn't seem like a reality. In a joint final declaration, the participants stressed the importance of peaceful settlements of disputes, respect for sovereignty, political independence, territorial integrity, and non-interference in internal affairs.
The crisis deepens in the U.S. House of Representatives as the position of House Speaker remains vacant, with a third nominee dropping out of the race. On the 24th of October, the Republicans held a secret vote nominating House Majority Whip Tom Emmer for the position. However, just hours later, the 62-year-old announced his withdrawal, sparking immediate backlash from his fellows. The two previous Speaker nominees had also quit due to divisions within House Republicans. Congressman Mike Johnson now emerges as their latest nominee after 3 rounds of voting following Emmer's departure. Nonetheless, it remains uncertain whether Johnson can secure the 217 votes needed to clinch the gavel. Time is running out as the House has struggled to pass bills since Kevin McCarthy's ousting.
Former Trump attorney Michael Cohen had a unique reunion with his former boss Donald Trump when he testified against the former president at his New York civil fraud trial. Trump didn't react at all to Cohen's entrance, though he watched intently while Cohen began testifying, staring directly ahead with his arms folded at his former attorney. Cohen's testimony directly implicated Trump, saying that he was directed by his former boss to inflate Trump's net worth on financial statements to hit an arbitrary number. Cohen said that he and former Trump Organization CFO Alan Weisselberg would manipulate Trump's financial statements, the documents at the center of the civil fraud trial, based on what Trump wanted his net worth to reflect. Looking at Trump's 2012 Statement of Financial Condition, Cohen said he recalled inflating assets including Trump Tower, Trump Park Avenue, Trump World Tower at United Nations Plaza, the commercial side 100 Central Park South, the mansion at Seven Springs, the Miss Universe pageant, and some other undisclosed properties. Judge Arthur N. Goron said trial testimony and financial documents about Trump's $1 billion bid to buy the NFL team Buffalo Bills in 2014 could be included as evidence because they support the Attorney General's claims that Trump had a pattern for making boisterous claims and practices when reporting his worth.
We're not worried at all about his testimony. The testimony and the testimony today from the accounting firm was that everything was legit. With all the pressure they were under tremendous pressure for years to say something else, and they didn't do that. They said it was legitimate and very strong, and I give great respect to them for saying it, but we're in the middle of this, so we'll see how it is, but you see what his record is. He's not a credible witness, and so far he hasn't said anything that matters, but he is not a credible witness.
The Trump team spent most of the day trying to undercut Cohen's credibility as a witness, given that he pleaded guilty in 2018 for lying to Congress.
The witness is totally discredited already, and they haven't even started, but he's totally discredited. He's their only witness. They use somebody that's a felon, that's a disgrace.
The Pentagon says American and allied forces in Iraq and Syria have been targeted several times with drones and rockets over the past week. Jane Kathleen Gregorio reports.
Pentagon spokesman Brigadier General Pat Ryder confirms that in the past week, American and allied forces in Iraq and Syria have been attacked 13 times.
But between October 17th and the 24th, U.S. and coalition forces have been attacked at least 10 separate times in Iraq and 3 separate times in Syria via a mix of one-way attack drones and rockets. We know that the groups conducting these attacks are supported by the IRGC and the Iranian regime. What we are seeing is the prospect for more significant escalation against U.S. forces and personnel across the region in the very near term, coming from Iranian proxy forces and ultimately from Iran.
Many of the attacks have been claimed by a group calling itself the Islamic Resistance in Iraq in Telegram channels affiliated with Shiite factions close to Iran. The U.S. has some 900 troops in Syria and 2,500 in Iraq. They are part of efforts to combat IS, which once held significant territory in both countries. IS was pushed back by local forces supported by international airstrikes. Armed factions close to Iran have threatened to attack U.S. interests. This over Washington's support for Israel. Jane Kathleen Gregorio for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The White House says a full ceasefire in Gaza would only help Hamas as Israel wages an air campaign against the militant group. It says, however, that humanitarian pauses should be considered to let vital aid in. Rosel Feria tells us more.
The comments from White House National Security Council spokesman that a full ceasefire would only benefit Hamas comes as President Joe Biden says aid deliveries to the Palestinian enclave are not fast enough.
We want to see all measure of protection for civilians, and pauses in operation is a tool and a tactic that can do that for temporary periods of time. So does that mean that is not the same as saying a ceasefire. Again, right now we believe a ceasefire benefits Hamas, a general ceasefire.
Gaza has been under Israeli bombardment since the deadly Hamas attacks of October 7. Thousands of people have been killed on both sides. Hamas militants stormed across the border, executing civilians and seizing hostages. Israel retaliated with relentless strikes on the Gaza Strip. UN Chief Antonio Guterres urges an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. This as European Union leaders consider a call for a pause in the fighting. Kirby says that while Washington opposed a full ceasefire, stoppages in the fighting to facilitate the delivery of aid was something that ought to be considered.
Could you clarify just a little bit how you would define the difference between a humanitarian pause?
I mean, I think it's a question of duration and scope and size and that kind of thing.
Kirby meanwhile warns that while the U.S. had urged Israel to minimize civilian casualties, some were inevitable. He says what's happening is war. It is combat, bloody and ugly. He says it's going to be messy and innocent civilians are going to be hurt going forward. Rosel Feria for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Israeli diplomats reportedly want Russia to take a more balanced stance in the current Middle East war. The Israeli Foreign Ministry says Moscow's conduct and remarks against Israel do not match the severity of the situation. Israel also criticized Russia's proposed resolution in the UN Security Council, insisting it did not match President Vladimir Putin's endorsement of Israel's right to self-defense. Russia's suggested resolution was rejected by the United Nations as it does not include condemnation of the Hamas group. Putin previously advised Israel not to react with brutality. He reminded Israel that Gaza is home to millions of civilians, with not all of them being a part of Hamas.
Shortage in food and fuel is making life in war-torn Gaza more difficult than it already is. David Oria has the details.
People living in the beleaguered region of Gaza wait as early as dawn to get a packet of bread. Bread is not enough for a family of 5. A Rafah resident says all facilities for Palestinians living under bombardment and fire have been destroyed. He says displacement of people from the north has added to the tragedy. He calls on countries to act toward a ceasefire. Aid, he says, is needed, but what they really want is a ceasefire. Another Rafah resident recalls that even before the war, people were already suffering. And the influx of people from Gaza City, she says, is not helping. Meanwhile, the Nasser Hospital ambulances face terrible dangers and challenges as they rush through the heavily bombed Gaza Strip. Worsening the situation is a fuel shortage that is limiting their ability to rescue people trapped under rubble. Ambulance driver Nassim Hassan says they are having great difficulty transporting the injured. He says they are running out of fuel. They have turned to petrol and diesel from the damaged ambulances and use it to fuel the ones that are still working. He says at the moment, there is a huge shortage of ambulance equipment and vehicles as well. Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry says Monday more than 5,000 people have been killed since Israel started bombing the Palestinian enclave. This following the October 7 Hamas attacks, which Israeli officials say killed more than 1,400 people. David Oria from Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The health ministry in Gaza reveals the complete breakdown of the healthcare system in the besieged city as 12 hospitals and 30 healthcare centers are out of service and facing a critical shortage of fuel. Healthcare facilities and staff are overwhelmed by the influx of trauma cases. 1 out of every 3 hospitals and 2 out of every 3 clinics in Gaza are unable to function. Director of WHO Emergencies for the Eastern Mediterranean region, Rick Brennan, emphasizes that even when supplies manage to cross the border, their delivery to hospitals is compromised due to the severe fuel shortage. UN humanitarian workers are urgently calling for fuel deliveries as it is essential not only for transportation, but also for powering generators that provide electricity to keep hospitals operational during this crisis.
An 85-year-old Israeli grandmother released by the militant group Hamas on October 23rd shared her experience after being kidnapped by gunmen.
כששכבתי על האופנוע, שכבתי על הצד, רגליים פה והגוף פה, אז השב"ב בדרך מכתו אותי, אז הם לא שברו את הצלעות, אבל הכאיבו לאזור הזה מאוד, וזה הקשה לי מאוד על הנשימה.
Yocheved Lifshitz described how militants seized her from her home, then took her into a tunnel system in Gaza. During her captivity, she slept on mattresses in the tunnels alongside other hostages, but also received regular medical care as promised by the militants.
הם מאוד דאגו לצד הסניטרי, שלא נחלה להם חס וחלילה, והיה לנו צמוד רופא שבא כל יומיים 3 בא לראות מה קורה איתנו, והחובש לקח על עצמו את האחריות ודאג להביא תרופות.
Lifshitz also accused the Israeli Defense Forces of not taking Hamas threat seriously, resulting in the costly assault on her community.
הם הכינו את זה במשך תקופה ארוכה, והם הכינו כל הצרכים שנשים צריכות, והגברים צריכים, ושמפו ומטרקר.
While 2 women have been released, more than 200 hostages are believed to still be trapped in Gaza, and some within the intricate network of Hamas tunnels, including Lifshitz's husband. Nearly 6,000 Palestinians have died from the continuous bombardment on the Gaza Strip by Israel's defense forces, with the Israelis suffering 1,500 casualties since the offensive mounted by the Hamas militants on the 7th of October. As the primary state actors squabble over a consensus for a ceasefire, people in the region see no end in sight to the violence.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas tells France's Emmanuel Macron that the international community must halt Israel's aggression as it battles Hamas in the Gaza Strip. JC Umol reports.
President Mahmoud Abbas of Palestine urges President Emmanuel Macron of France to stop the aggression in Gaza. The Palestinian leader strongly condemns Israeli airstrikes. Abbas says the airstrike kills innocent civilians in a barbaric way. He says Israel and the current countries that support it are responsible for the conflict. Abbas also calls for an international peace conference on Gaza. Meanwhile, Macron says nothing can justify the sufferings of civilians in the Palestinian territory since the October 7 attacks on Israel. Earlier in Jerusalem, Macron defended Israel's right to defend itself against Hamas attacks. The French president says there will not be any sustainable peace if there is no recognition of the legitimate right of the Palestinian people to have territory and a state. Macron is the first Western leader to go to the Palestinian Authority's headquarters in the occupied West Bank during the current crisis. JC Humol for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres alleges violations of international law as Israel pounds Gaza. Guterres urges an immediate humanitarian ceasefire to bring in relief. JD Mahina has more.
During a Security Council session, UN Chief Antonio Guterres expresses deep concern about what he calls a clear violation of international humanitarian law the world is witnessing in Gaza. Without explicitly naming Israel, he cautions that no party to an armed conflict is above international humanitarian law. Guterres personally travels to the crossing between Egypt and Gaza, this in a push to let in assistance. He welcomes the crossing of 3 aid convoys so far through the Rafah crossing. Guterres says help coming in is only a drop of aid in an ocean of need. He says UN fuel supplies in Gaza will run out in a matter of days.
The people of Gaza need continuous aid delivery at a level that corresponds to the enormous needs. And that aid must be delivered without restrictions. I salute our UN colleagues and humanitarian partners in Gaza working under hazardous conditions and risking their lives to provide aid to those in need. They are an inspiration. To ease epic suffering, make the delivery of aid easier and safer, and facilitate the release of hostages, I reiterate my appeal for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire.
The Security Council session is bringing together top diplomats, including U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. Blinken has previously rejected calls for a ceasefire, saying it would only allow Hamas to regroup. Hamas militants who stormed into Israel from the Gaza Strip on October 7 reportedly killed at least 1,400 people and took more than 220 hostages. On the other hand, the territory's Hamas-run health ministry says more than 5,700 Palestinians have been killed across the Gaza Strip in retaliatory Israeli bombardments. JD Mahina reporting for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Up next, Mexicans brace for Hurricane Otis. Iceland's Prime Minister joins tens of thousands of women on strike. And dozens of states take Facebook parent company Meta to court. Mata ng Agila International will be back after a short break.
Problemang may kinalaman sa pang-araw-araw na pamumuhay.
Ano sa palagay niyo?
Katiwalian at korupsyon sa kung saan-saan.
Ano sa palagay niyo?
Kalusugan.
Ano sa palagay niyo?
edukasyon,
Ano sa palagay nyo?
hanap buhay,
Ano sa palagay nyo?
ang daming issue. Samahan ninyo sina Ali Soto at Pat P. Daza sa pagbusisi sa lahat ng yan at iba pa. Ano sa palagay nyo? Year 3 na!
In Bangladesh, nearly 275,000 people fled to shelters on Wednesday as Cyclone Hamoon barreled into the southeastern coast, killing at least 2 people. Hamoon is the latest major storm to batter Bangladesh's coast with wind speeds of up to 104 kilometers per hour. According to reports, 273,352 people were evacuated to cyclone shelters. 2 people have died and at least 10 people were injured and are currently being treated in hospitals. Experts say that climate change has increased the intensity of tropical storms, with more rain and stronger gusts leading to flash floods. In May, Cyclone Mocha became the most powerful storm to hit Bangladesh since Cyclone Sidir in 2007, where it killed more than 3,000 people and caused billions of dollars in damage.
Hurricane Otis struck Mexico's southern Pacific coast early Wednesday as a catastrophic Category 5 hurricane unleashes 270-kilometer-per-hour winds and heavy rainfall upon Acapulco and nearby towns. The hurricane was anticipated to rapidly weaken in the region's rugged mountains, but the projected 5 to 15 inches of rain raised concerns about landslides and flooding. Residents along Guerrero's coast hurried to prepare, yet the storm's sudden ferocity caught many off guard. Otis carries the potential for even greater devastation than Hurricane Pauline, which struck Acapulco in 1997, causing extensive damage to the city and claiming over 200 lives, with hundreds more injured in subsequent flooding and mudslides.
In Iceland, tens of thousands of women, including the Prime Minister, walk off the job to demand equal pay and protest violence against women. Emi Capilita Roja has more details.
Iceland at present tops the World Economic Forum ranking for gender equality. Organizers of the protest, however, say that the country needs to make even more progress and lead by example. One of the Women's Day of Leaders says protesters are keenly aware that they have not reached gender equality. She says even though the situation may be better than other places, there is no reason to just call it a day. The protest day has been called 6 times since 1975. And this was only the second time the organizers made it a full-day strike. The other times, women walked off the job at a symbolic hour, after which they were technically no longer earning a salary compared to male colleagues. Statistics Iceland says the average wage gap between men and women was 10.2% in 2021. Around 90% of Iceland's women took part in the first protest in 1975. This year, Prime Minister Katrín Jakobsdóttir is among those striking. A spokesman says Jakobsdóttir will not attend to official duties and that the day's cabinet meeting has been moved to tomorrow. Emi Capilita Roja for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, and point.
Dozens of U.S. states filed a lawsuit against Facebook and Instagram owner Meta over harm to children. Estela Dominique with the details.
Accused of profiting from children's pain, damaging their mental health, and misleading the public over the safety of its platforms, Meta is being sued by over 40 U.S. states. Filed in federal court in California, the suit argues that in seeking to maximize its financial gains, Meta has repeatedly misled the public about the substantial dangers of its social media platforms. Some of the states suing Meta opted to file in local courts rather than join in the federal case. The legal filing accuses Meta of exploiting young users by creating a business model designed to maximize time they spend on the platform. This despite harm to their health. New York Attorney General Letitia James, in a statement announcing the suit, says kids and teenagers are suffering from record levels of poor mental health, and social media companies like Meta are to blame. The statement further says Meta has profited from children's pain by intentionally designing its platforms with manipulative features that make children addicted to their platforms while lowering their self-esteem. James says the suit urges the federal court to order Meta to stop manipulative tactics and pay hefty financial penalties along with restitution. Estela Dominique from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Disrupted by global warming, several species of insects continue to swarm in mid-autumn. Director of the Insect Biology Research Institute, David Guerin, cites as an example the case of the tiger mosquito. He says tiger mosquitoes can complete their life cycle now due to climate change.
Le cas du moustique tigre est un très bon exemple, puisqu'en fait déjà c'est un insecte qui à la base n'était pas trop adapté à nos climats. Le fait du réchauffement climatique, finalement son aire de répartition remonte progressivement vers le nord. Pendant quelques années il était présent, mais n'arrivait pas à faire tout son cycle de développement. Aujourd'hui, les conditions sont suffisamment favorables pour qu'il puisse faire tout son cycle de développement sur notre territoire, en région Centre-Val de Loire, et donc s'installer concrètement sur le territoire.
Guiron says the research proved that a large number of insect populations, like Asian hornets and green bugs, became persistent to global warming. Experts also warn about not having winter conditions, saying that this situation could be catastrophic for some insects since they cannot lay eggs or hibernate. Coming right up, the auto workers' strike expands, hitting a major GM SUV plant. China sends its youngest ever crew into space. And the NBA is back in a big way. Catch more news in business, tech, sports, and entertainment when we return.
We're in the sky! Kaya lumilipad na naman tayo. Sino ba itong uupo ngayon sa ating iconic chairs?
Finally, nag-guess na rin ako dito. Just canceled everything for you.
Talaga, ay naku, nakakatuwa naman. Medyo kakaiba ang ating papasukin ngayong araw. The Goodwill Resort with the Goodwill Cast. Woo! Tinur niya tayo sa kanyang bagong buhay.
Mundo.
Tamang-tama, pinag-uusapan sila ng lahat ngayon. Sige ka!
Ayan na.
Ayan na. Alam mo talaga siya, no? Yes! Tatlong buwan! Kinasal ka na! Yes! Ngayon natin malalaman ang totoo. So now, let's spill the coffee.
Spill the coffee.
Yes. And we're here at Net25. Ito ang tahanan ng Corina Interviews.
The U.S. Auto Workers Union extends its strike to a giant General Motors truck plant. The union says GM's strong profits mean workers should get their fair share. Arlene Ocampo has the details.
The most recent United Auto Workers Union stoppage expands a nearly 6-week strike to General Motors' Arlington, Texas assembly plant. It comes hours after GM reports a better-than-expected $3.1 billion in third-quarter profits earlier Tuesday. The move results in the walkout of 5,000 workers at the site. This makes some of the company's most profitable vehicles. With the latest action, more than 45,000 auto workers have joined the gradually expanding UAW stand-up strike that began September 15. Arlene Ocampo from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
U.S. State Department Chief Economist Emily Blanchard says the United States is ready to help Vietnam to prepare auctions for its rare earths mine. Vietnam is the world's or has the world's second largest deposits of rare earths after China. Rare earths are a group of 17 heavy metals that are abundant in the Earth's crust across the globe. Vietnam's government plans to launch tenders for multiple blocks of its Dong Pao mine before the year ends. Blanchard said that U.S. technical assistance to partner countries can extend to support Vietnam in crafting tenders or bids to generate the most interest. The United States believes Vietnam has a key role to play as it looks to source less from China. China is scheduled to send its youngest ever crew to the Tiangong space station on October 26. This is part of Beijing's planned construction of a lunar base and a manned mission to the moon by 2030. The crew consists of an all-male trio led by Tang Hongbo. Accompanying him will be Tang Shengjie and Jiang Xinlin. The crew has an average age of 38 compared to the Shenzhou 16 crew of 42 years old.
过去的2年中，我也时常梦回太空。空间站是我们走出地球，迈向宇宙的另一个家。
Meanwhile, the European Space Agency and Axiom inked a memorandum of understanding for an all-British trip to the International Space Station, or ISS. Space authorities said the mission would see a crew spending 2 weeks in orbit while carrying out scientific experiments. The last British individual to go into orbit was Tim Peake, who flew to the ISS in 2015. The Connectivity Standards Alliance has rolled out Matter 1.2, the second round of updates to the Matter protocol since its initial release in the fall of 2022. The Matter protocol was crafted to harmonize smart home devices, harnessing existing technologies like Wi-Fi to establish an open standard to the connectivity of home appliances. This latest update introduces new device types for the Internet of Things, expanding Matter's reach into new markets, and includes enhancements to boost interoperability and user experience. Among the new Matter device types are washing machines, refrigerators, dishwashers, and more. As a result, people can now control a new variety of appliances from robot vacuums to dishwashers and washing machines using just a smartphone app.
On a night which Nuggets players received their championship rings and raised their first banner in franchise history, Denver tipped off the 2023-24 season with a victory over the Los Angeles Lakers. This after Nikola Jokic yet again delivers a dominant triple-double performance for the Nuggets with a 119-107 win over LeBron James and the Lakers. Denver threatened to steamroll the Lakers early on with an 18-point lead at the start of the second quarter as the Lakers fought back to just 3 points in the fourth quarter. But Denver once again demonstrated their championship pedigree, pulling away to close out an impressive victory. Jokic finished with 29 points, 13 rebounds, and 11 assists, while Jamal Murray posted 21 points. The Lakers' scoring was led by James, who finished with 21 points, while new recruit Taurean Prince added 18, including 4 three-pointers. In the other season opener, the Phoenix Suns defeated the Golden State Warriors 108-104, spoiling Chris Paul's debut in the Bay Area. To what has been a roller coaster game, Devin Booker led the Suns to the victory with 32 points. A wild second half saw the Warriors overturn a 15-point deficit after outscoring Phoenix in the third quarter, before the Suns rallied in the fourth to complete a memorable victory. Booker was backed by 18 points from former Golden State star Kevin Durant. Stephen Curry led the Warriors scoring with 27 points, while former Phoenix guard Chris Paul added 14 points. Shaft actor Richard Roundtree has passed away at the age of 81. Roundtree's manager Patrick McMinn said that the American actor's death came after a short battle with pancreatic cancer. McMinn noted that Roundtree's role behind the Shaft film franchise made a turning point for African-American leading men in the film industry. Roundtree's career in acting began in the early 1960s. He was seen as a groundbreaking actor with his portrayal of Detective John Shaft.
The Philippine Consulate General in Barcelona, along with a Colorado-based lawyer, hosted an art gallery exhibiting courage. From Barcelona, Spain, Lovely Applejoy's Fabros reports.
The Philippine Consulate General in Barcelona, Spain, in partnership with attorney Elaine Antonio Bordeaux, hosted a one-woman art exhibit entitled Courage. A collection of sculptures that epitomize notable personalities for their unwavering courage and fervor for serving others, and iconic symbols were showcased in the exposition of visual artworks of attorney Elaine Antonio Bordeaux, a Colorado-based Filipino-American legal practitioner who pursues her passion for art, specifically sculpture, when she is not practicing law. Her experience as a refugee lawyer and an advocate of the rights of immigrants, along with her Filipino heritage, are embodied in the 12 sculptural works in bronze. Her aim is to make art that evokes emotions of pain, suffering, and struggle by providing the chance for hope, freedom, courage, and joy.
Just courage is what I want to show others. Courage is what I have, number one. And then from there, I started thinking about courageous people. Kasi siguro during the pandemic, hindi natin alam kung ano mangyayari sa atin. So why do I have to think about the worst things? I have to think about positive things.
The inauguration ceremony that took place in the Philippine Consulate General was attended by master's students from different business schools like ISADE and University of Pompeu Fabra. And among the attendees was Mr. Frances Villaló, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Culture of the Generalitat de Catalunya. The exhibit will run until the 30th of October, hence the Philippine Consulate General and Attorney Bordeaux encourages art enthusiasts, cultural aficionados, and the general public residing in Barcelona to come and visit the consulate to celebrate creativity and human resilience and experience meaningful conversations about courage, identity, and the power of artistic expression.
Among all the artworks, what piece do you like the most and why?
Pues es la pregunta que me ha hecho la artista también. La verdad es que hay muchas piezas que me gustan, pero especialmente una que se llama The Queen of Salaire, porque la verdad es que me transmite paz y belleza, ¿no? Es una escultura en bronce muy estilizada de una mujer que sale como de una piedra, y la verdad es que me ha transmitido muy buenas vibraciones y paz, esperanza y sobre todo belleza. Por eso me ha gustado mucho.
Reporting from Barcelona, Spain, this is Lovely Applejoy's Fabros from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
We're already halfway through the week.
Yay!
And to send you off this Wednesday night, here's our quote from Greek philosopher Aristotle. You will never do anything in this world without courage. It is the greatest quality of the mind next to honor.
And I think we can't underestimate that word courage, because we can exhibit our courage through the small things like trying a new dish or taking that extra step or the next step in life. Courage can be exhibited in any way.
I love it that courage is that quality which has you pushing forward, even if you are afraid or feel weak. It does amazing things to people and people's lives.
Can equate to something uncertain, but that's the beauty of it too.
Exactly.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie, Alagao-Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point. Thank you for choosing Mata ng Agila International as your trusted news source, keeping you connected to the world and on point with stories from around the globe. Follow, like, and subscribe to @Net25 TV.